Glenn, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock what?
Babe alert.
Have you ever met that girl and you think everything's going fine?
Excuse me, while I go and talk to the future Mrs. Pritchard.
Then she claims to love Final Fantasy VIII, and everything's ruined. Final Fantasy VIII just released on the PS4 and Xbox One. As I was debating to purchase it, I thought, maybe I'll actually beat it this time. For your information, I've been playing this game since I was a child, and I've yet to beat it. Once I get to a certain point, I just end up quitting. And as I was doing my recent playthrough, the same exact thing happened. I've come to realize that I actually despise the game. I honestly might label it the worst game of the franchise. I know Final Fantasy 13 was awful, but as hard as this is to say without puking, at least 13 had a coherent design that didn't disrupt proper progression. At least 13 had a system that actually made its characters feel like unique individuals in terms of gameplay. The system wasn't also blatantly overwhelming and inconvenient for the player. Jumping between paradigm shifts was a swift concept compared to this nonsense. The worst that 13 had going for it was its linearity. I didn't hate the battle system, but I didn't love it either. It seemed like an attempt in evolution from the system used in Final Fantasy 12, but unlike its predecessor, making things more automated just felt a bit underwhelming in general. There isn't too much I can say when it comes to general game design problems. However, with Final Fantasy VIII, I can talk about this shit for hours. Final Fantasy VIII was released in 1999 with critical acclaim. However, this really baffles me. The issues of the game are so deeply rooted in its design that it's really difficult to explain it. It's best to break it up into sections. The junction system. It is an overly exploitable and convoluted mess that promotes grinding. It is an inconvenient system that seeks to be manipulative for the sake of improper progression. It betrays character themes and it destroys their design as unique individuals. All of that may not make sense to you at first, but that's okay. I will explain each section, and I want to try to make this video as accessible as possible. To assure this, I believe it's best to start right at the beginning. Okay, so in your average RPG, you fight monsters and level up. As you level up, you get stronger, and to make things easier, you can obtain better equipment to raise character statistics. Usually you'll gain magic via leveling up, and whenever you use these abilities, MP will get depleted. Summons are examples of powerful magic abilities that use MP. These are basic concepts for any RPG game, harking back to the classic RPG, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. In some ways, once you've played one, you've kind of played them all, like firing a gun in a first-person shooter. However, in Final Fantasy VIII, all of this shit gets thrown out the window. I appreciate it when a game attempts to change the formula, but this is a great example of taking it too fucking far. As I said before, let's start at the beginning. Let's act like you are a new player who is loosely familiar with the RPG genre. You understand leveling and progression and magic as I explained it. And you're going through the classic long-winded intro of Final Fantasy VIII. You hear some badass tunes of one of the greatest soundtracks of the franchise. Before you sprint out to the open world to experience your first battle, you get stopped, and the literal teacher starts tutoring you on its battle system. Alright, so here we go. You know how much players just love tutorials, especially when it's unskippable, but let me tell you, you don't want to skip this tutorial. Not understanding this convoluted mess is where the difficulty of this game really comes from. Not only is this awful tutorial extremely vague, but it doesn't tell you everything. Information is actually sprinkled between multiple tutorial sessions throughout the game. So important information about how the game works isn't exactly conveyed to the player until it's really too late for people who don't properly understand it. Nowadays, we can easily look up games and understand how they work via third-party sources. However, we are going to be playing this game without a strategy guide or any kind of tips. For any veterans who may be watching, the game doesn't inform the player how important Triple Triad is. You see, the system is overly flexible. That'd be a good word. If you understand the system 100%, you would quickly be able to realize how broken and exploitable it actually is. For the sake of simplicity, I will explain how it works as if we were experiencing it rather than like a freaking classroom. Let's say you skip the tutorial because school's for chumps. You fight your first monster and you realize, oh my god, why can I only attack? Well, unlike previous games, summons are more than just magic abilities that use MP. They are the single most important thing in the game. And guess what? They are also missable. In this game, you must equip a GF to your character to add more to your battle menu. It's a little strange, but okay. Once they are equipped, you can add more abilities such as magic, items, summon, and draw. You must be thinking, Jason, what the hell does draw do? Well, don't worry. You will be very familiar as to what draw is. You've equipped Quizzicatle, or whatever the fuck that says, to Squall, not Leon, Squall, and you've equipped Shiva to Quistis. You've also put the time in to customize both of their battle menus. Since you can only have 3, one character has item and the other character has draw. For the sake of curiosity, you decide to use draw. You find out that the first baddie you run into has cure and that you can draw it from him. This is where things start to get weird. In Final Fantasy VIII, magic works a bit differently than your average RPG game. Instead of magic that a specific character may learn due to being a white mage or say wizard, magic can be gained by every character via drawing them from monsters. We will call the magic in this game magic items. Like items, you can gain magic items by an X amount. So if a character has 50 cures in his inventory, he or she can lash out 50 cures back to back without penalty of losing MP. So let's say you tend to draw a certain amount of cures and you think, wow, that was easy. Can I do it again? It turns out yes. Yes, you can. Enemies have an unlimited amount of magic items on them. Therefore, you can constantly draw cure from this enemy until you've reached the cap of 100. You can constantly draw cure from any enemy that has it. Now we've reached the first strange choice in game design. If we can have an unlimited amount of magic like cure by simply drawing them from monsters, what does that mean for potions? Hell, what does that mean for items in general? Why even bother purchasing Antidote when you can potentially draw an unlimited amount of Esuna from any monster that may have it? Now what does that mean for money? We already have a train wreck of potential design flaws and we are only scratching the surface here. I don't know, maybe money can be used to obtain better equipment. Just kidding, weapons are another system entirely where money is less of an issue rather than finding what you need to craft them. Okay, so we keep getting magic items until we cap out. I mean, why not take advantage of this situation?
1 hour later. 2 hours later. 3 hours later.
Obviously, you see where I'm getting at. The system encourages grinding. When you have your game designed for a player to take advantage of an optimal situation like this, you open yourself to exploitation. It's very unfortunate that the general gameplay by which to utilize this system as optimally as possible is by means of constant grinding. So every time you see a monster that has a magic item you don't have, why not grind for it? Especially once you realize how beneficial it is to have as many magic items to begin with. You see, in this game, you can equip magic items to character stats. Having 100 fires equipped to your strength makes them much stronger than without it. When it comes down to it, you are only as strong as your magic items. But it gets to the point where you start hoping a monster doesn't have a magic item that you don't already own. You don't want to constantly go through this. So what happens? You stop paying attention. Players will start to look elsewhere to try to optimize their characters. So what is the classic way of doing so? Leveling up.
They leveled up.
And now comes the issue of general progression. And that's too bad because, you know, well, it turns out rather than powering your characters, leveling up only makes monsters stronger. It's a little bit like Skyrim. It's actually more beneficial if you are able to maintain your level and suppress experience. This awful idea forces players to grind magic items per battle rather than over the course of multiple battles if they want to play with any optimal intentions. What we have is a full circle. Every time I defeat monsters, I'll gain experience. If I gain experience, my level will go up. If my level goes up, monsters get harder. Therefore, I must fight less monsters. Therefore, I must draw as much as I can from each battle. This is also the developer saying, fuck you, you should grind.
Fuck you.
So when it comes to grinding, pick your poison, I guess. You quickly realize that due to magic working like items, you don't have an MP bar. You also notice that your characters can use summons for no MP cost, dealing very high amounts of damage. This is what separates the men from the boys. Now don't you lie to me. Did you spam GFs on your first playthrough? Because I freaking did. You can get very far in the game with summons alone, but this direction is a giant rabbit hole, especially when you get to the end game. I previously mentioned that you can add magic items to things like strength and HP, and this is genuinely the best way to make your character stronger. But to obtain these abilities, you must first learn them through your GFs. With normal experience, you gain another type of experience called AP. That's right, there's another feature that you have to keep track of. With the concept of levels making enemies stronger, this leads many players to try finding battles that give the highest amount of AP rather than experience. One of the many abilities that GFs can learn through AP is one called Summon Magic Damage. It increases the amount of damage the summon does when casted. As great as that sounds, it's pretty fucking useless. Getting things like Strength Junction and HP Junction is much more important. However, when your GF learns a new ability, whatever that GF learns next is defaulted to Summon Magic Damage. Therefore, every single time a GF learns a new ability, you have to manually open your menu, scroll to GFs, find the GF you want, and move it to the ability you would rather learn. This can become very difficult to keep track of when you have multiple GFs. It's an awful design choice. What makes it manipulative is that if you are a person that spams GFs and isn't constantly paying attention to what they are spending AP learning, you are genuinely believing that you're getting stronger due to it defaulting to Summon Magic Damage. But really, you're missing out on using AP for much more important abilities. We haven't even really gotten to the real issue when it comes to this inconvenient mess. Instead of letting each character have their own GF like Persona, this choice is actually counterproductive. Since the goal is to try to earn as much AP as you can with the least amount of battles, you might as well have every GF equipped to your current 3 characters at all times. This allows every bit of AP to be added to all GFs rather than trying to give certain summons to specific characters. So Square Enix decided to add a system that allows you to swap magic items and equip junctions instantly between characters. So instead of having to draw magic for each and every character and every character having their own GF and magic items, you can just have 3 separate builds that you swap between everyone. The problem is, doing this will basically make all of your extra characters useless without their own inventory of magic or junctions. Now, if you sit back and think about this, you can probably imagine all of the issues this would create. Whenever the story has you jump between multiple characters or groups, you have to constantly swap them back and forth. They even have to constantly remind the player to make sure their junctions are equipped. You can easily end up going into battle without any GFs or magic on total accident. The narrative will actually have you switch characters, forcing you to swap out the junctions, but then it turns out they didn't have to fight anyone. So then it'll switch back to the characters that you were using before, causing you to have to swap the junctions back to the way they were. And then it'll switch back to the other character, causing you to have to do it all over again.
Yo, killing me with this!
There are also these little dream sequences with a character named Laguna. In those dreams, you can control 3 different characters. However, those 3 characters are randomly one of the builds from any of your party members. This is including characters that don't have a build on them. So you may have to go through the whole dream without any magic items. It's just a very dumb and inconvenient concept that we have to keep track of. We either have to deal with swapping junctions or draw grind for every single character that joins the party. I guess pick your poison. Now, this last problem is probably just my opinion. I actually enjoy the story and its characters, but its design betrays its lovable characters. Usually when you play an RPG game, each character has a unique theme or abilities. Garnet is a princess that seeks to cure the world. Vivi is a mysterious magician that learns unique dark arts abilities. Zidane is a lustful scoundrel that has the quickest initiative and can steal. Quina is very much a wild card that seems to be off in her own world. Her moves are mixed and scrambled, and she gains them from eating her enemies. Their abilities match their characters via theming, a concept I talked about in my last video. We can see the themes of each character in Final Fantasy VIII within its narrative, but what is it through its game design? There are small differences in numbers when it comes to initial stats, such as Squall having high strength and Rinoa having high magic. But there isn't enough variation here. Irvine has critical hits, but what does Selphie and Quistis have? If the difference between each character is just a number, we can just customize it to make someone as strong as the other person. Everyone is really just a blank slate for you to customize. This can be seen as a good or bad thing. You can decide to make a character what you want them to be. I just don't think it's effective. It's cool to be like, hell yeah, I've got Vivi on my team, now you're about to get fucked. But on this game, it's like, yeah, Selphie, she's gonna hit you. If the difference isn't noticeable until the end game, I also see this as a problem. Never should the theme of a character's core design take that long to experience. I may have said that I was disappointed with Persona, Like Final Fantasy VIII, it also has a pretty overwhelming design, but at least it had a clever way of making each character feel unique through elemental prowess. At least its progression was coherent rather than scrambled. At least it made obtaining and switching personas convenient and understandable rather than complex to follow. I don't know, thanks for listening to my video. I really hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. I honestly don't really mean to. I'm probably gonna keep playing through it to see if I can actually beat it. Hey, maybe my opinion will change after a certain amount of time. I don't know. I'll try it out.